Here where I live, eggs right now, for a dozen eggs is almost $12. Bird flu, man. There's kind of a thing going on around where I'm at where people are seeking out their neighbors that have chickens and buying eggs from them. One person I saw on the local news here, they're selling their eggs for $5 a dozen. So people are kind of flocking to them, but they can only supply so many people. Anyway, that's just a bit of trivia to share with you. I'm learning things about life after 60 and retirement that don't really surprise me, but once in a while they just make me stop and think. I want to share this with you if you guys are younger. But when I was younger, when I was a kid growing up, there were a couple of guys across the street from my parents, and they both lost their wives at an early age. Like, I used to look over there at these guys living alone. I used to sit there and think, I don't want to end up like that. As my life turned out, I've ended up like that. But I have been single for so many years now that I'm just kind of used to it. Or maybe I'm numb, I don't know. I used to look at them, and when their wives passed away, I used to wonder, why didn't they remarry or even attempt to go find another mate? I understand now. I know why. Things that I'm learning about aging and retirement. I'm retired. One of the first things I had a hard time coming to grips with after I retired was, well, let me go back. Let me take you back a little bit. I had to retire early because of my situation with my family. What was going on was Mom was living by herself. I was talking to her every day over the phone because she was afraid. She had this fear of being alone and nobody being around to help her. So I used to call her every day. I was 200 miles away. I would call her every day and make sure that she had what she needed and she was being taken care of. My older sister, was fighting cancer. It got down to the point where Mom got to where she couldn't function. So my sister, in the middle of fighting cancer, my sister uprooted herself and moved to where Mom was and tried to help. And it became overwhelming for her. So she called me and said, you need to get here because I can't do this. So I was in that kind of squeeze of, and I had just gotten to where my career was doing well, finally. I had to make a decision, and I chose my family over the career because when my dad passed away, he was calling for me on his deathbed, and I wasn't there. I was 220 miles away working, and he passed away, and I always felt guilty about that. And I didn't want to have that same guilt this time with Mom. I made a decision. I left my career. Everything happens for a reason, I guess. But I chose to leave that and move 200 miles back to where I grew up and take care of Mom. I became my mom's caregiver. I was her caregiver for about 3 years. She passed away. I had all these things going on in the middle of all that, in the middle of all her trials and tribulations of going back and forth through rehab and hospitals. And in the middle of all that, I was trying to get her house fixed. Her and my dad couldn't keep that house up and maintain it over the years. In the middle of all this mess, I hired a contractor to come in and help fix the place. Long story short, he was a crooked son of a gun, and he took half my life savings. The whole thing was just kind of a mess. Long story short, I ended up here. I ended up in a small town alone. I've been alone for so long that it doesn't bother me that much. When you're 60 or over, it seems like, and I keep thinking back about those guys that lived across the street from my parents, how they lived when they were this age. And I keep looking at them, and I keep You know, when I was young back then, I kept thinking, how do they do that? How do they live by themselves? I couldn't imagine it back then, but here I am. Small town out in the middle of nowhere, isolated as a person can be. I have one friend left, my best friend who I grew up with. He has gotten to where he doesn't communicate with me anymore. So here I am, I'm gonna be 66 this year in a couple of months, and I'm looking at all this and I've been thinking about it, and I thought, what can I tell you guys about being this age? One of the first things I noticed about being retired and being this age was I would say for the first 6 months, maybe even a year after I lived here, I kept waking up early in the morning, getting up, thinking I needed to be somewhere. And it was not something that I was doing on purpose. It just happens. I was getting up, and I would wake up and sit up in bed, and I would sit there and think, what am I doing? Where am I going? I mean, I don't really have to be anywhere. It's kind of like your habit of your work life bleeds over into your retirement life because you're so used to the grind and getting up each morning and going to a job. And it took me better part of a year to kind of get over that. Now I just get up at my leisure, and I get my morning coffee, and I take my sweet time. That's one nice thing about it. The other thing is, when you start aging, you're going to notice silly little things too. Like, I used to laugh at people that talked about this, but now I'm doing it. You'll walk into a room and then you'll forget why you went in there. It's like, I'll walk into the kitchen or I'll walk into the TV room and I'm like, what was I doing? What was I supposed to get something? You'll start doing that. I've done it. It's funny, but it's not. Then you'll start to notice that the hair up here starts falling out and it starts growing in all kinds of places you don't want it. You know, ear hair, nose hair, neck hair, toe hair. I don't know. It's one of those things about aging that I think is weird. It's like, are we turning back into our ancient ape-man type bodies again or something? And then when I noticed this when I turned 50. If you guys are in your 40s, get ready for this. I noticed this when I was 50. I'll never forget it. One day I was out at a restaurant, and normally it was one of my favorite places to go hang out. I went once a week. I knew half the wait staff in this place, but I noticed when I turned 50, and it's maybe just a coincidence, but I turned 50 and I was at this restaurant and I noticed that I was being avoided. It almost felt like I was being ghosted, and nobody was talking to me all of a sudden. It just seemed like I was just a face in a crowd, and everybody else was talking to everybody else, and I was just kind of sitting there eating my burger and looking around and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm getting old already. I don't know. I'm still learning how to take life one day at a time and not think too much about any of it. Because once you start taking it too seriously, then it starts causing you start overthinking and starts causing you problems. So I just keep thinking back to those two guys that I looked at across the street, and they had their hobbies and they had their pastimes. They seemed to handle it pretty good. And I'm talking about ancient times here. I'm talking about no internet, no cell phones, no technology, nothing. This was before computers. This was back in the times when you had The big technology was push button telephones. Ooh, ah, you know, went from dial to push button. That was a big deal back then. From black and white TV to color. Ooh, you know. So this was back when we didn't have all this kind of thing that could keep you busy. And those guys, one of them was into gardening. The other guy was into mechanical stuff. He was always tinkering on things. I never got over that kind of, because I just didn't think I could do it, but here I am. So I wanted to talk to you guys about this because some of you are not even thinking about this stage of your life. You're too young. You don't think that far. And then some of you guys, if you're in your late 40s or 50s, you may start to notice these kind of things. I am still not quite used to being retired. It just feels kind of, I don't have the right words for the description, but like I say, for me, almost the first year of it, after I got through all those ordeals with my family, I found myself waking up all the time thinking I had to be somewhere, and I didn't. And it was strange. It was really strange. And it still occurs every once in a while, even today. I still, once or twice a week, I'll wake up and I'm thinking, what was I supposed to do? It's just bizarre. I've seen all kinds of videos on YouTube lately about how people are avoiding people. Like people over 60 say they're avoiding people because all the drama, all blah, 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 and all this stuff. I don't avoid people. I just have found that I don't go anywhere anymore. I don't seem to, and it's like if I don't have a reason to go anywhere, I just don't. I'm not and this is maybe one thing you'll run into is interests that you had when you were younger are just not doing it for you anymore. I'm learning that too. I used to want to travel and go see everything. Now it's like I've become this kind of homebody. I don't really enjoy traveling anymore. I don't sleep good in my own bed these days, much less in a motel room. I just don't sleep good in hotels. If it's not my own bed, I don't sleep that good. And even these days, I'm in my own bed, I wake up a lot. I just wanted to share this with you guys about what my experiences are so far with aging and retirement, because it can be uncomfortable at first. It's taking me a while to get used to the fact that I don't have to be anywhere. The good part about it is I don't have a boss yelling at me all the time like I used to. And I'm not stressed out from that and my coworkers bitching at me. Life lessons I learn, I'm one of these where I'm just to the point where I'm numb. It's not that I avoid people, I just don't. I need a really good reason to go somewhere now. Or I just can't get myself motivated to go. I don't know if it's because I've gotten in a rut or I'm lazy or I don't know what's happening. But these are things that you might experience when you get older. The saddest part about aging, if you are blessed enough and live long enough, you're going to lose everyone you love. I have lost all my family, all my friends, most of my classmates that I went to school with back in the day, they're all gone. It's a strange feeling. It's really, because it's challenging. That's the way this life is. My conspiracy theory on this life is we're here to learn, constantly learn, and that's the way I look at it. There's always something to learn, and I learn from you guys. I learn more from other people than I ever did in school. I keep saying this, but that's one of the main things why I like doing a YouTube channel, is because you guys teach me more than I can learn from some classroom. That's all I have today. I just wanted to talk to you guys about what I'm learning about aging and being in my 60s. It's not easy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be hard. So do the best you can with what you've got, wherever you're at. I'll see you guys on the next one.